Hi, I wanted to demonstrate a couple of techniques that I didn't assign as homework, but are really handy to know if you're not that familiar with Excel. If you already know how to use the formulas for frequency and count, then you don't really need to watch this video. But if not, you might find this useful. So this is problem 5 from chapter 4 and out of the Ross book, and it shows the falls in a hospital. And we have the dates of all the falls over here. We have the day over here, the day of the week, I believe. And then we have, or no, I guess this is the date. So they've just got the date. And we have the patient's ages. We have medication, which could be quite useful, whether it's heavy, I imagine, sedatives or pain medication, moderate or light. I'm not really sure what that means. Location, and then the shift. So let's say we want to look a little deeper into this data, and we want to know, well, what shift are most of these falls occurring on? Because time of day could be a big factor. May or may not be a big factor, but we want to find out. So a really useful formula to use for this is Countif. So it will count up the number meeting a specific criteria. So I've already set up over here my little table that I'm going to use to store this information. And I've got the shifts, day shift, evening, and night shift over here. So let's go into number of falls, and we're going to use the equal signs for a formula, and then Countif. And it tells us that this function counts the number of cells within a range that meet the given condition. So next I will do a parentheses, and then I will highlight the range that I want to have. I want it to count within the shift range. So I'll go up to the top here, hold the cursor and drag down to capture this entire range in this column. Whoop, down at the bottom, okay. And then let's go up to the criteria. So Countif, and then we'll just put a comma, and then 1, so that will count all the falls that occur on the day shift. And then I put a parentheses at the end, and it says 36. So out of the total falls, 36 of them occurred on day shift. Well, we also want to know about the other shifts. So in order to get it to copy down this exact range, I'm going to put a $sign between these two values, the letter and the row number, so that it will not, the range will not shift as I drag it down. And I press enter. And then when you copy it down, though, it just gives you the same number, and that is because the criteria doesn't change. So I'm going to go in and manually put in the criteria, and it is 2, shift 2 for that one, 53. And then for the next one, shift night shift, which is the smallest number of falls, which makes sense in a way. And then I want to have the total down here. So I'm going to go to auto sum, and we have 108 total falls. So let's say that we want to also know the percent, because sometimes that's useful to give us a little bit different perspective. So to get the percent, I will take the 36 for a day shift as the numerator, and then the total falls as the denominator. And I've already got it set up to have percent here. If I didn't have that set up, on the home page I could just click on percent, or I could format the number, go to format, and it tells me the percent, so I could say what it is I'd like. I could make the decimal point a little bit bigger if I wanted to say be a little more precise. And then again, because I want the total to stay the same, I don't want that to shift as I copy down, I'm going to put a $sign between K and 11. And that way when I copy, I will get the percents for each of these shifts. And 44, almost, well, kind of close to 50% are on the evening shift, which tells me, gee, I better pay attention to that shift. What also would be quite useful is to know how many falls for each by unit. So which units do I really need to focus on? And so we'll be looking at pivot tables later, and so that might be something you want to do with a pivot table. Yeah, it's where you can look at a couple of different criteria at the same time, shift and unit perhaps. The second function that I wanted to show you, though, is something called frequency, so that we can stratify within a range. So not just looking at specific numbers like which shift, but across a range. So, and I thought I think the problem asks us to look at stratifying falls by age ranges in the Ross book. So what I find useful before I start, though, is to figure out what's the minimum and the maximum in the age range. And so I've already done that here in the interest of time. So there's two other functions. One's called min and one's called max, which makes sense. And then I did the range, the min for the range of ages, and I got 13 for the minimum and 106 for the maximum. So we don't have anybody under 13 falling or over 106, which is incredible to me that they have folks over 100 years old, and I think there's a few of them in this column. We could eyeball this column, but when you have a lot of data, it's really easy to miss something, right? We're going down and your eyes get very tired. And so this is just much more accurate and gives me an idea of how I might want to stratify the ranges for the age. So to do this, first we need to create what is called a bin. So several bins for or buckets for the age ranges. And so since we've got 13 as the minimum, I'm going to say 20 and under for the first bin, because that kind of is a nice grouping of all the adolescents. So we'll have 20, and then maybe just to make it easy, I'll go up and say by even numbers, 40, and then 60, 80, and then to capture the last person who's 106 years old, I'll say up to 107. So I'd be sure to get them all in there. So when we use the frequency function, it will capture all the falls of folks up to 20 years old, and then the next one will be between 21 and 40. The next one will be 41 and 60, and so on. So in order to do that, we need to create an array. We need to have this go across a span. So instead of one cell, we're going to be using all of these cells to capture, or to tell Excel to use an array function where it just doesn't look at one cell, but it looks across the criteria, so from 21 to 40, for example. So since this is an array, we need to highlight all of the cells before we start typing. So I'm going to highlight all 5 of these, and then I'm going to start my formula. So I'll put in an equal sign, and then frequency, and then I will put in parentheses, and then I need to say what is the data array, and that will be ages. So we're going to highlight all of these ages, go all the way down the column. Whoa, I went too far. Okay, and then I go back up to the top here, and I will do a comma for the bins, for the bin criteria. And then the bins are these, and then I'm going to put a parentheses. Now I can put the other type of parentheses to indicate it's an array in by hand, but an easy way to do that is to do Control Shift Enter. Okay, And let's see what that formula looks like. So you can see on the outside, I've got these other types of parentheses, which I can't recall what they're called now. And that indicates to Excel that that is an array, that I want to capture the whole thing. And so in these age ranges, I have got different numbers. It actually works. So between 21 and 40, there's 22 falls. And so you can see most of the falls, which is probably not surprising, are happening from 81, well, 80, really, both 61 to 80 and 81 to 107. We've got most of them. So again, we can do a total, and we can 118 again, and then we can see what's the percent for each of these ranges if we'd like. And so again, I can just do the numerator is the number of falls, and the denominator is the total. And this I don't have in percent, so I'll go up and click percent. And so, not surprisingly, 10% of the falls are up until 20, so all the adolescents, and who knows why that is. They're just taking off without ringing the bell and falling after surgery or something. The other thing we might want to do is make a nice bar graph of this. So we could highlight that, go up to Insert, and then look for a chart. We could go to Recommended Charts. I'm thinking a bar graph would be good. So we could just do a simple bar graph. Well, let's do a 3-degree one just for fun. There we go. And then visually, this really gives us a nice overview of what we're looking at here. And obviously, most of the falls are in higher age range. And before we complete this, we're going to want to put a nice title. We're going to label the X and Y axes, and it would be nice to further define what these numbers mean down here, so that people know it's between 21 and 40, for example, for this call, years, and so on, to explain what is in our graph. And that's how you use Countif and the frequency functions.